So in this video, I am going to share my thoughts about the Luke Cage Netflix series. I am going to kick things off with the weaknesses just because I would prefer to go ahead and get those out of the way and then end on a positive note, because overall, I really did enjoy this series. I thought it was a great series, very entertaining. And I did run through it pretty quickly, but I did want to give myself just a little bit of time to gather my thoughts before I did this video. So like I said, let's go ahead and get the weaknesses out of the way so we can end on the strengths, on a positive note. So first of all, I know this is pretty much unavoidable because I'm a writer myself. Plot holes, they happen even in the greatest works. In fact, I like to watch CinemaSins on YouTube, and they focus on errors in movies and plot holes in movies, and some of the greatest movies ever made, they have plot holes too. It's a very tough thing to have everything tied together perfectly when you write a story. So some of this may be nitpicking to some people, and again, I just feel like I have to point these out because they are there. There are some questions that were left there. So the first one here says, why didn't Cottonmouth just pay Mariah back? Through the first couple of episodes, after that inside job went down and everything, I understand that Cottonmouth, just because of his street cred, he definitely had to get his money back from those young guys. That had to happen. I don't understand though why he was acting like that was the only money he had to pay Mariah back, because obviously it wasn't. Think about all of the money that he sent to her office later on. Millions and millions of dollars, just these huge duffel bags of money. He had plenty of money. So why wouldn't he just go ahead and pay her back to keep her from breathing down his neck? That to me it seemed like a flaw in logic there. If I missed something, somebody please let me know, but that was something that bugged me a little bit. Next question here. Why would Diamondback allow Shays to talk back to him and question him? Diamondback just seemed ruthless, like he was above everybody else, and yet Shays kind of got in his face at certain points and was very, questioning him quite a bit. And they were talking about how they'd have to, hash things out later on. But I mean, Diamondback didn't really seem much like that type to wait to deal with things. So I felt like maybe there's some information missing about Shays that we're just not clear on at this point as viewers. I would like to know though, because that was kind of odd to me that Shays seemed like the only person that Diamondback really respected, and I just didn't fully understand why. Also, I didn't understand why there was no retaliation when Diamondback killed those heads of those other crews or gangs, whatever you want to call them. Because he took out the head of, I think it was the Jamaicans, Haitians, and I can't even remember what the other crew was. But yeah, there was no payback. I just don't quite buy that. Because you think about it, Diamondback seems like he was pretty much just a man behind the scenes, kind of on his own. He didn't even bring like a crew with him. He took over Cottonmouth's crew after Cottonmouth was killed. So I just don't understand why he was as feared as he was, and why there wouldn't have been any retaliation from those other crews. I mean, even the Latin crews at first weren't like trying to strike back against anything he had done. They had to have a sit down and work that out to decide to go after Diamondback. And speaking of that, that's another scene that kind of bugged me, because Diamondback was in the warehouse. He had his weapons and everything, the weapons warehouse or whatever, but he didn't have much manpower. Some of Cottonmouth's men had already been killed or taken out, whatever had happened to them. So he didn't have as much manpower as the Latin crews did. He was cornered, and yet he was able to go back into that room and have time to suit up. That seems very convenient to me. That was a very convenient cutaway from that action. Not fully believable to me. So yeah, like I said, just a convenient cut, and that does happen in movies and TV series and so on. But yeah, it did bug me just a little bit in terms of logic. And then another big question that came from the finale is, I said, why would the doctor who helped give Luke Cage his powers suddenly, decide that he's going to try to create that with Diamondback? I can understand the man wanting to recreate the process, because he said himself that it could lead to cures, and he's trying to help people. So why would he choose Diamondback, a criminal? And if it was because he wanted some payback against Luke Cage, I mean, payback for what? Yes, Luke Cage did go on a rage, a very justified rage, especially after finding out some things about his ex-wife. He went on a very justified rage, and he did attempt to destroy the doctor's findings and everything. But the doctor was able to salvage it. So I don't understand why he would possibly have a grudge against Luke Cage. It just seems like one of those very convenient things where they're trying to set Diamondback up for a return. Maybe a little bit too convenient for me. So sticking with the focus on villains, I just felt overall the villains weren't interesting enough or well handled. I think they were close with almost every villain. They were close to being interesting, but they all had some things about them that just kind of held them back in my eyes. Like I said with Shades, we didn't learn enough about him. And I understand them not going the comic book route in his situation, because if he would have been, blasting beams out of his eyes and all that, that may have been a little bit too much to, break all that down and everything. So I understand them having him as just a gangster basically, but still, I felt like we need to learn more about Shades to see how he got into the position that he's in and how he's managed to stay in that position. Now, as far as Cottonmouth is concerned, I like the casting. I really like the actor. He was great on House of Cards as well. Really good actor. But once he was killed, it's like he just disappeared from the series. And what I mean by that is that they didn't even bother to break down his background more in flashbacks. In a way they did, in a way they didn't. I just feel like there wasn't enough. Like, his presence was just completely wiped from the series. And I didn't like that. I just wish they still could have done more with him through flashbacks. And there just wasn't enough there. And it's like, as soon as the character was really getting interesting, because I think villains are most interesting when you see some of their vulnerabilities. That's what makes Loki a great villain, because he's not just completely evil. He does have some vulnerabilities. He's jealous of Thor, and then when their mother died and everything, of course, he definitely saw his vulnerability there as well. And the fact that he was lied to basically about where he comes from and everything, so Loki has plenty of vulnerabilities. That's what makes him interesting. Cottonmouth was starting to seem very interesting, but they just didn't quite follow through enough there. And then, like I said, once he was killed, it's like he was only mentioned in relation to the investigation of his murder. That was pretty much it. And this might be quibbling to some people. I know some of this is going to come across as nitpicking, but yes, the actor has a charming laugh, but did they have to use it to punctuate so many scenes? It did get kind of annoying, and it's like, come on, figure out a different way to close out this man's scenes. It started to kind of grate on my nerves after a while. Now, focusing on Mariah, with Mariah and Cottonmouth, them being family and everything, their background I thought was interesting, just not quite enough of it. I think it could have used maybe even a little bit more. And her turn towards accepting murder, like, think about the scene on the roof, which was a pretty great scene when Cottonmouth found out that one of his men, I keep forgetting that guy's name, he just bugged me so much, maybe I didn't even try to remember his name. But when Cottonmouth threw him off of the roof for killing Pops, and then, Mariah pretty much bolted. She already had her money. She was ready to go. She said she's not cool with murder, so her turn to me was a little bit too quick. I understand that she killed Cottonmouth in a rage. That's understandable. But her accepting, people that she's associated with, killing others, and, even having a hand in those murders, it seemed just too abrupt for me. I didn't quite buy that. And also, something else that bothered me about Mariah, and let's be clear, Alfre Woodard, again, great casting. She's a great actress. The more I see her perform, the more I like her as an actress. So I'm not putting down Alfre Woodard. She did her thing with what she was given. But I felt like it was not clear whether or not she truly believed in everything that she was saying. So she presented herself to the media in one way, and to an extent she said some of those same things behind closed doors, but she was also very different behind closed doors. So it's like, I just don't know how much we were supposed to buy into her trying to build Harlem up. I felt like that could have been made clearer to us. And also, it bothered me as well that she's meant to be a powerful character, and you do see towards the end of the series where she is becoming more powerful, but at the same time I felt like she was just too easily manipulated. I didn't like how Shade seemed to be kind of playing her for a pawn, and then once Diamondback was on the scene, it seems like he had way too much sway over her as well. So that did bother me, but overall I do feel like the character was better represented than she has been in the comics. Of course they couldn't go that old school route because you see how ridiculous the old school iteration of her looks there, and of course they couldn't do that with Luke Cage or Shays or any of the other characters pretty much. And she's definitely more interesting than the current version of Black Mariah in the comics that you see there in the bottom left, because I did read at least the 5 first issues of the recent Luke Cage and Power Man and Iron Fist comic series, and Black Mariah, to me, she was just kind of there. She wasn't really adding much to that storyline. I don't know, maybe the character is more interesting beyond that. But yeah, overall I think Alfre Woodard's version is the best version maybe, but still I'd like to see her be more clear about what exactly she is trying to accomplish. And Diamondback, again, I like the actor. He was menacing. He was definitely menacing. And his introduction was great, coming right at Luke Cage. That was cool. And, you saw right away, this is a man that's not afraid to get his hands dirty. Not at all. But he was played a little too broadly. And what I mean by that, if you don't know, sometimes in Hollywood they use the term chewing up the scenery. That means overacting, basically. He definitely felt like he was just overacting too much, maybe being a little too melodramatic with his evilness, and his hatred of Luke Cage didn't make much sense to me. And I actually felt like at one point towards the end of the series, it was either the last episode or the episode before last, where Luke Cage even said, "You shouldn't hate me, you should hate our father." And I was like, well, yeah, that makes so much sense. That's the issue. It's like, why is he has such a grudge against Luke Cage? I can understand him being jealous, because yes, Luke Cage got more attention and everything, but really the things that happened between them and the things that happened to his mother, that was really on their father. So I could understand him being very upset about their father. And I felt like they didn't say enough about the father. They kept the man in the shadows, and when his name was mentioned, they quickly brushed it off. Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe they are going somewhere with that in the season 2. But right now, it just made it seem like Diamondback had a grudge that wasn't completely justified. And even when they showed them together as teenagers, they seemed like brothers. Diamondback was helping Luke Cage. He's helping him train and everything. There didn't seem to be animosity. So, again, it was kind of confusing why he would just flip on him and set him up and then come back for him once he was out again. It just wasn't clear enough for me. Definitely one of my biggest disappointments with the series was the action was kind of weak. And I do understand that Luke Cage is very powerful. Not too many people can even try to stand up against him. And he's not a martial artist, so there's not going to be too much fancy footwork and things like that. But still, I think the choreography could have been better, and the editing could have been better as well. Even the big centerpiece action, or action centerpiece, whatever you want to call it, when he went into Crispus Attucks and he really stepped up as a hero, I felt like that was not well edited. It was kind of choppy, just not as interesting as I thought it was going to be. I actually thought it played out better in the preview, oddly enough. And this is me on a personal level here. I so wanted to see him use a chain as a weapon, and they did that in season 2 of Daredevil, and which was a phenomenal scene, by the way. I absolutely love that scene. I'm glad they did include it. But once I saw Daredevil using the chain as a weapon, I was like, oh man, they're not going to do that with Luke Cage then. I just knew that was going to be the case. So yeah, that didn't happen. So just on a personal level, little disappointment there. Now overall with this series, I felt like Daredevil, to me, is moving in the right direction. They put into me a lot more of that comic book vibe. Whereas Luke Cage, I felt like it was maybe more restraint than it needed to be. It really did kind of hold back on some comic book elements. I feel like they can push that further. So for example, Misty Knight, they kind of hinted at, what would happen or what could happen with her arm, but it seems like they backed off away from that in the end. So it seemed like more like a reference to that than them actually going that route. But I would be so cool with her having the bionic arm, provided by Tony Stark. I think that would be so cool. I just don't know if they're going to go that, but I really think they could push the comic book elements further. And another quibble, just on a personal level, this is a Netflix series. Netflix, they pretty much can do what they want to in terms of content. I'm sure they have their limits as well, but why would they play? Okay, this is again during the Crispus Attucks scene when Luke Cage went in to get Diamondback's dirty money, and everything, but not Diamondback, excuse me, Cottonmouth's dirty money. But they played a classic Wu-Tang song from their first album, Enter the 36 Chambers. They played Bring the Ruckus, but it was an edited version of the song, and it was very distracting to me, being a diehard, old school Wu-Tang fan. I was like, why is this an edited version of the song? And if they felt like it had too many uses of a certain word, then maybe they should have chosen a different song. It was just a little distracting to me, and as a Wu-Tang fan, I guess it just bugged me a little bit. So that's the weaknesses out of the way. Let's go ahead and get to the strengths, and I will try to pick up the speed here. I don't want this to be a ridiculously long video. I don't want it to be as long as the episode of Luke Cage. So let's go ahead and jump right into the strengths, the positives here. I definitely like that Harlem felt like a character. They did a great job of that, and that was pretty important to this series. I think even more so than Hell's Kitchen feeling like, a character in Daredevil, which I don't think that was really successful there. But in this case, yeah, Harlem really felt like a character, and that was great to see. It really felt like a community. That was really important that they got that across, and they succeeded. The music, loved the music throughout, and them opening up with Raphael Sadiq, just awesome. He's a great performer, great artist, been doing his thing for a very long time, and they had some other great artists as well, like Faith Evans. I think they had the Delphonics towards the end. There were some artists I wasn't familiar with, so it was great that they had a good mix of artists, different types of music going on. And of course, it relates to the character Cottonmouth, so the music actually really had a purpose there, and that was very cool. So you could also say that the music was pretty much a character in the series as well. And I will say there was nearly perfect casting throughout. I'll say, the characters weren't always the best written, but overall the casting was pretty on point. And Michael Coulter as Luke Cage, yeah, it's hard now to picture anybody else in the role. And I feel like we say that a lot about Marvel movies, and Marvel television, because they're just so on point with their casting. They're doing a great job with it. And when you can keep saying, yeah, like, I can't picture anybody else in that role, that definitely shows they're doing the right thing. And a character I just didn't expect to be as major as he turned out to be. Now, I mean major as an impact, because you watch the series, Pops basically just had 2 episodes, and then they did have like quick flashbacks of him. But yeah, just within those 2 episodes, man, he brought a lot of heart to the series, and you definitely felt the impact once he died and he was gone, and the whole funeral and everything. Wow, it just really amazed me. And I've always liked that actor too. That's a really great actor. He's had a lot of smaller roles. Some people may recognize him from, he was one of the guards in The Silence of the Lambs, and then he was in the follow-up Hannibal as well. And I think he was like the only guard that Hannibal actually respected. So yeah, he's had a lot of small parts throughout the years of TV and movies, but man, he really held it down in this series, and I definitely felt that impact, like I said, once his character died. The Biggie Smalls, and people that know me know I'm a huge fan of Biggie Smalls, or Notorious B.I.G. I prefer to say Biggie, or Biggie Smalls, but people know I'm a huge fan. So the way they made that connection between him and Cottonmouth was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It was a lot more than just having a picture up on the wall. And the connection, obviously, to me is that, okay, the Biggie Smalls, or Christopher Wallace, that actual person, he did go into drug dealing, but it's not like he was forced into it. Like, his own mother will say that he wasn't forced into drug dealing. It's not like it was the only option he had to get by. he chose it, and they did depict this within the Notorious movie, that he chose to go into drug dealing because he wanted nice things. You know, he wanted things that he couldn't afford, that his mom couldn't afford. He wanted the nice kicks and the nice clothing and the jewelry and attention from the ladies and all of that. So, but music is really what was in his heart, obviously, because he's one of the greatest MCs ever. In my book, he is the greatest ever. So Cottonmouth definitely mirrors that, because he went into this gangster lifestyle, but he's really a musician at heart. I love whenever they showed him up on the balcony just smiling and really getting into the performances going on downstairs and everything, and then him playing, the piano himself, and then you see the sort of shaky hands to where, he thinks about the violence and everything that he's experienced and things he's done in the past or had to do, and I really love that connection there between, a real individual and this character. That was so brilliantly handled. And one of the things, I actually heard another YouTuber mention this, and it's another brilliant connection between the two of them. And you notice that in the Biggie picture, the crown is not sitting perfectly on his head. So it's almost like not being fully willing to accept that crown. And that's definitely how Cottonmouth was. He was the man on top. He talked about power a lot, but you could see, like, again, with the shaky hands and everything, that he just wasn't completely comfortable, because that's not what he was meant to be. The man was meant to be a great musician, and it just didn't pan out for him. I gotta say now, first of all, I love Rosario Dawson. I've loved her from her beginning with acting all the way back to the movie Kids. I think she just shines on screen. Gorgeous actress, and that's a great combination, when a woman, or really any actor, is, attractive to the eye and then also very talented. And that's definitely Rosario Dawson. And I think that this was the best use of Claire, and I love that they did refer to her as the night nurse. At least one character did at one point. So this was definitely the best use of her thus far. I felt like in Daredevil, she was okay within that. Not the most well used within it, but it was solid introduction. I didn't like the way that she was used in Jessica Jones. I mean, I don't think she popped up till like the final episode or maybe the last two episodes, but it's like she was suddenly there and maybe there too much, and her scenes kind of grinded the speed of everything down to a halt. I didn't like that. And that's not her fault. Again, that goes back to the writing. But the way she was used within this series was excellent. And I really like that you see an arc to her character as well. Like, her character matters. She's not just a side character. And I like that they showed her tough side as well. Very cool. Method Man, to me, he stole the show for a bit there, and there were some other fun cameos, but definitely Method Man stole the show. And when Luke Cage mentioned PLO style, and they unfortunately kind of gave this away in a preview, but when he mentioned Method Man's song PLO style, I was like, wow, that took me back, because that was my favorite song on Method Man's first album. If you never heard PLO style but Method Man, and you are a hip-hop fan, definitely check that out. But yeah, Method Man was definitely fun in it. And I was so glad, though, that it wasn't just the scene in the bodega, that they did have that follow-up with him with Sway and Heather B on the radio. And he did the freestyle for Luke Cage and everything. That was pretty awesome. I was definitely smiling all the way through that. And I gotta say that this series was so well balanced. It felt modern, and yet it had that blaxploitation vibe. And I like that Luke Cage, he felt like a real man. Like he has urges. You know what I'm saying? He's a real man. Sometimes there are some heroes like Captain America, to me, is just not relatable sometimes, because especially in the first Captain America movie, and even the Winter Soldier, I would say as well, because it's like you're a man, and yet he's too much of a Boy Scout. It's almost like he's not even really interested in women, like he's just so focused on his job and what he's doing. And that to me is just not realistic. It's not relatable. So Luke Cage is a real man, and he does things that real men do, and although I will say it was a little uncomfortable when he was smooching on Claire right in front of Misty Knight, who he had been intimate with as well. That was a little awkward. But, again, and I mean, there was no big fuss about it because it's just that old school, like Richard Roundtree, Shaft type of vibe, like I said, blaxploitation. But I do like that they were able to deliver that, but then keep things modern as well. And I do like that they really did, especially through Misty Knight, point out some of our current issues like police brutality and the system being broken. They didn't shy away from that, and big respect to Netflix and Marvel for allowing that. I thought that was so cool that they didn't shy away from the current state of America. Now, if you're a diehard comic book fan, you know that there are plenty of Easter eggs, but even if you're a casual fan like me, I didn't follow the Power Man series. I didn't read those old comics. I didn't read really any Luke Cage. I've seen comics that he was featured in, and then, like I said, I did read a recent arc of him with Iron Fist, which I really did enjoy, but I don't know a whole lot about him in the comics. I've actually read more like background profiles and watched some videos where people talk about him much more than I've actually read him in the comics. But still, even as a casual comic book fan to an extent, like, there were a lot of really cool Easter eggs in it, and it does make me kind of excited about where things are going with Iron Fist and the Defenders. And I'm just really hopeful that they deliver with the Defenders and with Iron Fist, especially the relationship between Iron Fist and Luke Cage, because in the comics, the comics that I read, it was just so funny, so entertaining, and I hope that they do allow some levity there. And I definitely enjoyed them kind of, picking at Luke Cage's, Power Man's old costume, which, was ridiculous, and he called it ridiculous. So I really liked the way that they implemented that. That was pretty hilarious. And this last thing I want to point out, and this is so important for Netflix because they've locked themselves into 13 episode seasons. They got to make sure that there are no filler episodes, and I felt like there were no filler episodes in Luke Cage, and I was so glad that that was the case. I felt like Daredevil season 1, definitely towards the end, there were just too many things that slowed that down the I don't know why I keep like not being able to come up with the exact word for that, but basically things just kind of grinded down, the speed slowed down, and that just was no fun. And I think especially the episode before the finale of season 1 in Daredevil, if I remember, I think that was the episode where I was like, what is the point of this? Because it was just so much dialogue that felt repetitive. And the same thing with Jessica Jones. I think Jessica Jones was guilty of that too, that some episodes felt kind of like filler, especially with her annoying neighbors. That just kind of bugged me as well. But yeah, with Luke Cage, I think every episode had a purpose and was pretty solid overall. Like it felt like that each episode actually mattered. So I definitely have talked more than enough. Sorry this is such a long video, but if you really stuck with me all the way through, I definitely appreciate that. And I want you to really respond to 2 questions for me. I want to know, what did you think of Luke Cage season 1? Break it down for me, your thoughts about it. What did you think was positive about it? What do you think was negative? Your strengths and weaknesses. And then also, how would you rank the Netflix Marvel series thus far? Remember, there's been 2 seasons of Daredevil, there's been Jessica Jones, and now Luke Cage. Me personally, I was kind of back and forth between Daredevil season 1 and season 2 as being top, but when I think about Punisher being implemented so well, and still having the Kingpin as a presence and everything, I gotta say I think Daredevil season 2 is at the top for me, followed by Daredevil season 1, because I love the action and the storytelling in that as well. Even though there were a lot of slow moments, it was still pretty solid. And then I would say Luke Cage third, and then I'd have to put Jessica Jones at the bottom, just because I could do a full review about Jessica Jones, how there were definitely some plot issues there. I'll give you just one example. Purple Man getting pictures of Jessica Jones every single day. I mean, come on, I understand that obsession is a real thing, but that just felt like a very convenient plot device that just didn't make sense to me. But that's why I would put that series at the bottom, because it definitely had some plot issues and some unnecessary annoying characters. But when I'm ranking these shows, I'm not really putting them far apart from each other, because I think overall Netflix and Marvel, they're doing great things with these series, and I really look forward to more in the future. Iron Fist, Defenders, Punisher, and I hope that they bring other characters into the mix as well. I know they're trying to figure out where Blade should go. I think Blade would be a great fit on Netflix. Let me know what you think about that as well. But that's enough for me jibber jabbering. Like I said, I'm looking forward to your feedback. Again, if you stuck with me all the way to the end, I really appreciate that. And also you see down there in the bottom left those pictures of some pops that are up and coming. I gotta get them both. I'm looking forward to those as well. But yeah, thank you all for checking out my video, my review. I'm not going to give a grade or a number or anything. I'm just going to say I love this series, even though I see some faults in it. Really enjoyed it, and I hope you all enjoyed it as well. Look forward to your feedback, and you all take care. Till next time.